What's going on, gardeners? It's Thursday, January 20th, and we have a rare ice storm that's coming right for us here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina, and this doesn't happen very often. So now is a great idea for me to show all of you how to protect all of my fig trees in containers. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon storefront and spread shop in the video description for a list of the gardening products I use and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated. As you know, I currently have something like 3 to 4 dozen fig trees that I grow in containers, and they are several years old. And every single year, without fail, people ask me, how do I protect my fig trees in containers from the cold of the winter? And the answer is, on any given year, I usually don't. And that's because here in Zone 8A, North Carolina, we rarely see temperatures below the 20s. And fig trees are deciduous trees, and as deciduous trees, when they are in dormancy, they can easily tolerate a hard freeze. However, that being said, as far as deciduous trees go, figs are pretty much one of the least hardy of the deciduous trees in existence. They are certainly the most cold sensitive deciduous tree that I have ever dealt with. And the big problem that we have coming right now is freezing rain. When it comes to fig trees taking damage, they start taking damage in the low 20s or upper teens on their lignified hardwood, depending on how old the tree is and how deep they are into dormancy. If it's a very large, well-established tree, especially one in ground, they may be able to take lower temperatures. However, it's important to note that when you see those minimum temperature ratings, like when somebody says, oh, this tree is hardy to 15 degrees Fahrenheit, what that means is it can take a brief overnight dip into that 15-degree Fahrenheit range, and then it immediately needs to skyrocket in temperatures once the sun starts to rise, and then they need to warm back up. The problem with the system coming right now is we are going to get very cold temperatures with freezing rain, and the cold is going to hang around, and we're barely going to get above freezing the next day. So when you don't warm up the next day and it's paired with frozen precipitation, that causes far more damage at higher temperatures than a simple cold shot. Now, when it comes to protecting fig trees, if you live somewhere like the Northeast or the Midwest where you have winters that are consistently cold, it is very easy and very common that people store their container fig trees in their garage. And that's because garages in places with true persistent cold winters generally stay in that 32 to 45 degree Fahrenheit range all winter. And that is ideal because those very cool refrigerator temperatures, but not below freezing temperatures, will keep the fig trees in a state of dormancy. Here in North Carolina, I can't do that because my garage stays pretty warm throughout most of the winter. It will get pretty cool at night, but it can get into the 50s, 60s, even 70s during the day when the sun comes out and the brick house starts absorbing all of that heat. I cannot store fig trees long term in my garage because it will get too warm and they will break dormancy, and that is the worst thing that can happen. I have to actually leave them outside, exposed to all of the elements, to stay in dormancy. They will stay the most adapted to the cold, and they will be least likely to bloom or start leafing out too early and suffer damage from a late season frost. So if you live in a place with consistently cold temperatures in the winter, you should know by now that you pretty much just have to stick all of your container figs in the garage, keep them chilled at refrigerator temperatures, and then bring them out during the spring. This video is going to be more geared towards people with more mild winters, but that see those brief cold air outbreaks from the Arctic, like here in the southeast, or if you're in the Northeast or the Midwest and you bring out all of your fig trees in the springtime, and then you get an out of nowhere late season freeze in the forecast, and now you need to scramble to protect them all. So I will show you a good way that you can protect your trees. Now, if you have a garage with plenty of room in it, the easy solution is to just stick your pots in a wheelbarrow and just wheel them over to your garage and just stick them in there for a couple of days. But many of us do not have the luxury. We either don't have the room in our garage, like yours truly, or we don't have a garage at all. And this cold shot is going to be a problem because the cold is going to linger around for 10 days. And if you have a cold shot like that coming, it's actually risky to store them in your garage because with 10 days of warm garage temperatures, they could outbreak dormancy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my house as a radiative heat source and as a wind block to store my trees, to keep them out of the cold, and then I'm going to place a tarp over them to keep the freezing rain off of them, and that will help protect them. And the best place to do that is a place that blocks the north wind, and put them up as close to the radiative heat of the house as possible, because your house absorbs the sunlight all day and radiates it back to the trees. So a south wall of your house, or in this case a southeast alcove where the fence blocks the north wind and I get the radiative heat of the house on the east side, is the best I can do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of my fig trees and I'm going to wheel them over and deposit them right here and press them up against my house for the radiative heat protection. And I'm going to put my most valuable trees up against the house, with my least valuable trees fanning out, because the closer to the house they are, the better the protection will be. I have all of my most important fig trees that I want to make sure I protect placed in this alcove right here. And I'm going to cover them with a tarp that is grommeted, so I can place some of these garden staples right here in the grommets to hold it down to make sure that the tarp does not blow off. And then I'm going to use some twine to secure it to the other side of the fence. And the goal here is to keep the freezing rain off of all of the trees and to try and block some of the wind. It's not going to completely cover them and hold in all of the heat, but I don't really need it to do that because the house will provide some radiative heat protection. I really want to just keep the elements off of them and prevent any kind of desiccation. So now I'm going to place the tarp. So I'm going to take one of these garden staples and I'm going to press that into the ground, and this is going to hold the tarp in place. Well, we have certainly lost a lot of daylight here, so I'll make this quick. What we did was we draped the tarp over all of these figs, and then we tied them to the top of the fence up there with a little bit of twine. And then down here, the garden staples are holding the bottom fixed. Then I have these 4-foot pieces of 3/8 inch rebar. I pounded these into the ground, and they are holding the grommets of the tarp down. So that way, when the wind blows, it's not going to blow the tarp off. And that is going to hold the tarp in place, so when the freezing rain comes, none of it will accumulate on the figs. It will simply roll off. Well, it is about 24 hours later and the ice storm is here. To hold the tarps down, I had to put a bunch of these 4-foot pieces of 3/8 inch rebar in the grommet holes of the tarp, and it's doing a great job of fighting the wind. It hasn't budged, and it's a good thing I did this because this tarp is starting to get covered in ice. It's just everywhere. So that ice can be really damaging even at temperatures that wouldn't normally damage your trees because of the way it just clings to it and just chills everything through. So it's going to be a really cold night tonight, and then tomorrow we'll have to reveal how good of a job this tarp did at protecting the figs.
Later that same evening.
That is solid ice. And boy, did we get a lot of ice last night. I had to empty this tarp several times because it was accumulating so much weight, but it did stay on. You can see all of the ice that fell all over the ground, but it did stay on, and it kept the ice for the most part off of my trees under here. So they look like they're pretty safe and out of the weather, but it's going to get down to 18 degrees tonight. So now they dealt with the ice and the sleet. Now they're going to have to deal with the extreme cold. It's Sunday, January 23rd, and we got down to 18.7 degrees Fahrenheit last night. Not only is that the coldest temperature I've recorded all year, but it is the coldest temperature that I've ever recorded ever on this property since I moved into this house 3.5 years ago. It's never gotten this cold. In fact, only once have I recorded a temperature colder since I moved down here to the Wilmington, North Carolina area, and that was the January 2018 100-year freak freeze event. So we haven't had temperatures like this in this entire area in over 4 years. In fact, it's now 4 p.m. and there is still ice all over the shade. It hasn't melted at all, and we've only gotten into the mid-40s. But how did my figs take this cold temperature? How did they handle the ice storm? How did they handle this freak freeze? Well, I'm going to take you over and show you. While it usually takes several days, sometimes even a week or two, for cold damage to show on fruit trees, you can usually see right away if any of the buds are damaged and if there's any shriveling up of the wood, because that usually will mean that there is more cold damage coming. And I'm happy to say there is absolutely no signs of any cold damage on any of these trees. Any of the buds that were green are still green. There's no blackening on any of the tips. They all look great. So it looks pretty clear to me that this method of protection was 100% successful at protecting all of the trees from both the ice storm and the severe cold weather outbreak. Now, it's going to be very cold here for the next week or so, so I'm going to leave this tarp up because I already put in the work, and it's really easy once it's up to just string it over these pieces of rebar and cover them. And it's going to be pretty cold the next couple of nights, so I'm just going to leave it there now that I know that it works really great. So hopefully you can employ this method if you need to quickly run out and protect your fig trees or any of your other potted fruit trees as well. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you're notified when we release more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the gardening products I use in my garden, they're all linked down below in my Amazon storefront. And while you're there, check out my spread shop if you want custom merch to support the channel. Thank you all again so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Come on, Dale. Time to go potty. What is all this stuff all over the ground, Dale? This has never happened once in your entire life. You know what this is? It's called sleet. It's a lot like ice. Oh, it's really hard to walk on. Bless you. Buddy, be careful. It's slippery. I don't think Dale knows what to make of it. He's never seen anything like this before. And he is ready to go inside.